This is episode 617 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to have Doug Messier back on the show. You can find him at Douglas M. Messier, Messier, .substack.com. That's Douglas M. Messier .substack.com. He has been a frequent guest on Tipping Point, New Mexico, talking about privatized space and Spaceport America, Virgin Galactic, etc. But welcome back, Doug.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you for coming back on. We'll just jump right into it in terms of things going on with New Mexico and the space industry. Uh, Virgin Galactic recently had its Unity module fly its last mission out of Spaceport America, and now they're going to be on hiatus for, they say, a couple years, but so many delays over the years with Virgin Galactic. Who knows what's going to happen? But talk about the launch uh, and what happened on that Saturday, and anything else you want to discuss about how they've been doing recently or so far with their space tourism industry.
Sure. That was on Saturday, they flew four people on suborbital mission. It was their 12th suborbital flight and their seventh commercial flight with paying passengers. They flew 23 people, 23 paying passengers over the past year from Spaceport America. VSS Unity is being retired. Um, they retired it for several reasons. One is that it could only fly four passengers instead of the planned six, and it only had a flight rate of once per month, and that wasn't generating very much money for them. And so they're gonna focus on building a couple of new Delta class ships, and those ships are supposed to be ready and to fly commercially in 2026 and be put into revenue generating service. And they're supposed to fly multiple times per week and be easier to turn around and maintain. And they'll be capable of flying six people instead of the four. So they need a fleet to really make this work. So that's what they've decided to do. And part of the reason is that they're not flying is that they were losing over $100 million per quarter with the operation that they had. They had a net loss of $102 million in the first quarter of this year, and they were losing a lot more. The first quarter of 2023 was 159 million, and they've got about $867 million in cash and cash equivalents and market securities. So that's a runway, so to speak, of about 2 years to get the new ships up and running. So that's basically what was happening. And the revenue for the first quarter of this year was only $2 million and a net loss of 102 million. And they were projecting, I think, about 3.5 million based on revenue for this quarter. So that's
Now,
that's the that's the plan anyway.
based on your understanding of the technology, why can't they launch more frequently? Because obviously, going from four to six people is a small, but that's a decent proportion in terms of your gain, in terms of the number of revenue customers that you're going to launch each time. But it does seem like their main kind of goal financially is dependent on much more frequent launches. What's wrong with the current craft that they can't launch as frequently as they plan to with the new Delta?
Just there's a lot of turnaround and inspections and work that needs to be done in between flights. Um, so they were flying on about a 4 week schedule last year, and then they reduced that to once a quarter. So they've had 2 flights this year. Um, so that's part of it. The other potential part of it has to do with the VMS Eve mothership, the White Knight 2, that carries the spaceship to altitude. And that's an interesting question because Boeing subsidiary named Aurora Flight Services was hired in 2022 to build new motherships and develop those. They were supposed to be ready for commercial flight in 2025, along with with the new spaceships. Now, Boeing sued that work ended in May of 2023, and there's a dispute over why that ended. Boeing says that Virgin Galactic needed a new mothership to replace the one that it has, which is now 16 years old, and they wanted that as soon as possible. They wanted it for flight tests in 2024 and for commercial service 2025, and the new spaceships are supposed to be ready in 2025 for commercial service. Um, Boeing said that the work on the project ended after about 9 months because Boeing concluded it couldn't produce that vehicle. The Aurora Flight Services subsidiary couldn't produce it on the time frame that Virgin Galactic wanted. Virgin Galactic got mad about this and ended the partnership. Virgin Galactic countersued, said that Aurora did slipshod work, and so that's now in court. They're now fighting that out in court. There's also an issue of Boeing says that Virgin Galactic kept some technical specs and modeling equations that are trade secrets, and they want Virgin Galactic to destroy those. Virgin Galactic says that they're not in possession of any trade secrets. So that's going on, and that case is going on in Virginia court. So it's an interesting question of if Boeing is right, then the flight projections um, that they're guessing that VMS Eve would be able to do beginning in 2026 are probably not very realistic, and those projections are very ambitious. So they want this. They've moved back the the spaceship has been moved back to 2026. The new motherships to 2028. In the meantime, they're going to be flying with this VMS Eve, which will be 18 years old in 2026. And they wanted to increase the flight rate up to 125 flights per year with revenue of 450 million. And Virgin Galactic says it has a maintenance program that can, maintain via the mothership through that kind of a flight rate. But Boeing's lawsuit claims that that's not accurate. So it's going to be an interesting to see what happens.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So you
Yeah,
have the Eve mothership, which I'd be interested in your thoughts. It to me is a airplane, a very kind of basic airplane, except for it has to take the Unity and potentially the other I forget the name now, but too many names for all these ships.
sorry.
But they're no, it's not my fault. It's my fault for not remembering. But they want to use it for the next generation ship, and there's kind of questions as to whether that uh is possible. I mean, 18 years isn't that long for a 737 or 747, but it's questionable for this kind of craft. I think I'm
Well,
getting that from you. No?
yeah. The question is, I wrote about this back in 2014. It's a story in the Sunday Times of London, and they discovered some cracks in the carbon composites. And I know that they've had problems with the main spar that runs along that long wing. Now, this ship is it was built as a proof of concept prototype to prove that the ship would work and function. The original plan was to upgrade it for commercial service, but I don't think the builders who were Scale Composites, it wasn't Virgin Galactic, it was a contractor called Scale Composites, ever really intended it for to last this long. And back in 2022 or 2021, they were planning to do a 4 month overhaul of the ship to improve it and deal with various issues that ended up taking over a year. Now they say that the mothership is in much better shape right now, but it's still, it's getting on in years. And if Boeing's claim that they really wanted that as soon as possible in 2024, a new mothership in 2024, 25, in order to improve its flight rate. So if that is accurate, then the projections that Virgin Galactic has may not be very realistic. And Virgin Galactic, since the beginning, has not had any sort of realism in its schedule for on its flight schedule, on its costs, or on its flight cadence. So this would be a reversal if they can do that in 2 years and have new spaceships up in 2026. And it's unclear. And then 2 years after that, have the new motherships. So I don't know. Was that clear?
Yeah. Oh no, that's totally clear. And that's
No.
just one of the issues we're dealing with. Do you think the new ships will be what's the technological difference, I guess, or what do you see as the main difference that they believe they can launch them at such a more rapid cadence as opposed to the way the Unity ships have been used? What is there some
Uh,
secret sauce or some new technology that they're using?
I think they're going to be lighter. The current ships are a bit heavy. Um, I think they're saying that they'll be easier to maintain and inspect and turn around. Um, I haven't seen a lot of details on more specific than that. And they'll be able to, they'll be able to fly 6 people instead of four. Um, so we'll see what happens with that. Um,
Okay.
so it's possible that Boeing is wrong about the motherships and that the Virgin Galactic has found a way of maintaining them uh, and having a flight rate that they want. But we'll see. I mean, I've got I've seen a document that the banker that Virgin Galactic put out in 2008 um, when they were seeking more money for the project, and it reads very similar to what they're putting out right now in terms of flight rate and projections and how long things are going to take and so on and so forth. So it's been a long history of optimism and not matched by any reality.
Well, Boeing's had a tough run of things recently, both their
Yeah,
their commercial flights as well as their Starship did finally launch to the International Space Station, but definitely a lot of delays there. So who knows how that will work itself out. I just didn't know because, you know, again, flight cadence, if you can launch something once every 2 to 3 months, it would seem that you should be able to launch it every month or every 2 weeks, unless
yeah.
there's some kind of technological stumbling block there. But you're saying there's no big nothing big is going to be changed on the spacecraft that would make it inherently more able to launch just really frequently.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Virgin Galactic is claiming that they've got better ways to manufacture the ships and maintain them and inspect them and be able to turn them around a lot quicker. So, um, but their flight rate has never been more than once a month. So that's going to be a pretty big leap. So you've got to get the technology to work, and then you've got to get the operations to work, and you've got to have a really good safety culture to make sure that all that you can ramp up to that level
Sure.
of flight. So it remains to be proven, I guess is what I'm saying.
Got it. Well, there's no doubt that their stock price has suffered dramatically in recent years, since say 2021, when they were up to over $50 a share. Now we're looking at below $1.
Yeah, it's at
What
90 cents today.
Yeah, what do you think that will have in terms of an impact on their plans for the future?
Well, their stock price, they've got a proposal to the shareholders of a reverse stock split. And basically, they would take one for every one share. You would kind of split that. So you'd have a lot more shares, but you'd have fewer shares and they'd be worth more money. So the ratio would be determined by the board of directors, anywhere from one share, 2 shares for one to 20 shares for one. Now that's going to be voted on. I think that they have a annual meeting later this month, so we should know whether that works. They recently got a notice from the New York Stock Exchange that they will be delisted unless they can get their stock up to $1 over a period of time. They've got 6 months to do that, and they can get a 6 month extension. But they're going to try to do it by a reverse stock split, where you would hand in, say, 20 shares for one new share that would be worth more, or 2 shares for one. It depends on what the ratio is, and also depends on whether the stockholders decide to go for that. That's been done by other companies that went public by special purpose acquisition companies through mergers. So that's it's been done before by other companies that went public in the same way.
It strikes me as something that would cause some problems for them for raising money, in terms of just it's not a good look, especially at the time we're at with regard to them shutting down their their launches and whatnot. It just seems it would be kind of tricky
Yeah.
to pull this off, to say the least.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with the vote of shareholders, and it's not good having stock under $1,
True.
excuse me, to raise money. It's probably not a good look to be doing a reverse split right now, as you say, with them shutting down for 2 years. There's another thing that relates to Spaceport America directly. In 2018, in December 2018, they revised the lease on that. So under the lease right now, they're paying $2.26 million a year, which comes out to 188,888 dollars per month. Now, in the event Vici provides 3 months advance notice that they don't plan any revenue generating space flights for at least 1 month, uh, Vici pays a minimum user fee of $50,000 instead of that lease fee. So that's going to be up to 600,000 a year instead of two and a 2.26 million. So
And that was
it's
going to be
gonna
my next kind of question here was, uh, I think it's hard to see. Of course, I haven't really been down and checked out Spaceport America and what, if anything, is going on around there. But this was all built thanks to Bill Richardson and his belief that we were going to create this space tourism business in southern New Mexico and that this was going to be an economic boom for the state. Obviously, or at least so far as I can tell, that hasn't really happened, even when they have been launching their fairly regular flights. But that situation is going to get a lot, uh, you know, financially less lucrative for the state of New Mexico in the near future because of the decision you just discussed, as well as their lack of launches for the foreseeable future. Is this You just see this as kind of a lost cause for New Mexico economically? Is there reason to hold out hope based on other activities there? What's your take on the status of Spaceport America at this point?
it's been a white elephant and a bit of a boondoggle. They spent 225 million building it. They've been losing money. They've had to subsidize it from taxpayers every year just to operate, and they've been putting tens of millions into expanding it for other uses. So eventually they might get Virgin Galactic flying a lot, and it would be paying full rent, and also for it would pay additional money if they exceeded a certain flight rate. Um, and they've had some success in getting other tenants there, but it hasn't been all that profitable really. And so it's been very difficult to kind of look back on that. And if you wanted to spend $250 million, you could have spent it on a lot of other things that were probably more impactful. I heard that they had 600 people at the spaceport for this flight on Saturday, and that's not very many. And I think they were expecting a lot more. But I've seen these flights here in Mojave, and basically the plane takes off. You don't see it until a minute or two before the flight, and the White Knight 2 mothership starts putting out contrails so you can see where it is. And then they drop this thing, and seconds later, this engine fires for a minute. It goes way up in a minute. It's interesting to see, but it's not something that would draw me to make a special trip there to go see it, because it's nothing like it's nothing like an orbital launch. I've seen a number of them. I've seen a shuttle flight. I saw the first SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch. I've seen some launches over at Vandenberg. Those are spectacular. They take off from the ground, just you know, sound wave hits you. It's really amazing to see, and Spaceship Two just doesn't have that impact. So I
Yeah,
don't think there's going to be a lot of tourism generated from it.
yeah, and I guess that's one of those things I never really contemplated one way or the other. I mean, I'll admit I've never been to Cape Canaveral. I never, as a kid, went down and watched the space shuttle launch or any other spacecraft. I mean, I think it's really neat to watch on TV, and I'm sure you don't get the full um, feel of launching a spacecraft from the television, but on the other hand, you do get to see a lot more detail about what's going on, and your investment of time is far less significant, and you don't have to go, I don't know, 3 hours each way out into the middle of the New Mexico desert to uh, try to watch something like this. And I guess on the other hand, it's good that they're able to launch the technology that they have relatively safely. They certainly had some problems earlier on in their in some of their launches, and it seems like they've been able to do the Unity launches fairly safely. So, is that your thought as
Um,
well, that they've done a pretty decent job launching these outside that one where they kind of went outside of their airspace, but other than that they've done a decent job, or am I giving them too much
um,
credit?
yeah, they've had some issues on the flight test. The one flight that I saw here from the flight line um, in February 2019, they nearly lost the vehicle, and there had been a maintenance mistake, and they ended up blowing out their horizontal stabilizer. And the safety experts said that they were very lucky not to lose that ship. It was the VSS Unity. It was the only ship they had, operating. It's still the only ship they have operating. Um, so they had a close call. They also had some other lesser close calls during some of the flight tests. Now, expect close calls during flight tests. That's pretty normal. But you, I don't have enough insight into their commercial flights to know how well they did. They seem to go fairly well. And on a flight earlier this year, they lost one of the heavy pins that is used on the mothership to align the spaceship when they're mated. So this thing fell off the White Knight 2, and there's video of it kind of um, it flies past the kind of over the spaceship as it's dropping. So um, that was I don't know what the cause of that was, but it just fell off, and if it had hit the ship, it would have been a bad day. I think we would have had some serious problems. I'm not sure if that would have been fatal or just an emergency abort. But yeah, they've had some issues. So um, be interesting to see that. Uh, I'd be interested in knowing more. I don't have enough insight into that to really know.
Yeah, a lot of that information is not really
Yeah,
publicly available,
I
unless the FAA gets involved or something, which they kind of don't
yeah.
really.
I mean, when they went outside of their assigned airspace, that was pretty serious, and they compounded that by not telling FAA.
Right.
The FAA found out, I guess, from air traffic controllers in Albuquerque, and then later grounded the ship. But it's interesting if you watch, that was the flight that Branson was on in July um, 2021. And if you watch the post-flight news conference, they asked Branson how the flight was. He says, "Great, oh, it was wonderful." And then he asked the chief pilot, David Mackay. He said, "David, how'd the flight go?" And then the president of the company stepped in and answered the question and said it went great. There were no problems, and he didn't let Mackay answer, and that was very interesting. Now, the day after that flight, Virgin Galactic filed to sell $500 million worth of stock to raise money. And then the investigation started in late July. And then right before FA grounded the ship, Branson sold about $300 million worth of stock. Now, Virgin says, oh, Branson didn't know, and there was nothing improper about what they were doing. But it's there have been a number of class action lawsuits where those actions have been cited as allegations of insider trading and things like that, and those are now working their way through the courts. And other statements, such as that flight in February 2019 that I told you about, where nearly lost the ship. Um, Virgin said that flight had gone perfectly. So part of the problem I have covering Virgin is I don't always believe what they tell me. It's just, you know, it's like this. It's always sunny, and
Right.
the sun's always out, everything's always perfect, but it's really not. There's been too many incidents over the years where they've made promises they haven't kept or said things that were later turned out to be not accurate. So,
So I want to talk a little bit in a second about just kind of other things going on at Spaceport America, but I do want to get a little bit of a prognostication. If we have a conversation in a year or 2 years, where do you think things will stand with Virgin Galactic? Do you think they've flown their last space mission? Do you think they will be able to kind of rise again like the Phoenix after uh, redeveloping their entire flight system with a depressed stock price or a low stock price at least, in kind of their current situation, or uh, you think this is kind of the swan song for them?
I don't know. My guess is that the schedule won't hold. It'll take longer than they think and be more complicated to get new motherships and the new spaceships running according to the schedule they have, which is 2026 and 2028. And I think that they'll probably face a cash crunch at some point, and their survival will probably may well depend on their ability to continue raising money, and that could be difficult. I mean, I hate saying I never say never, but I'm not sure the projections that they have are very accurate. That's going to cause issues down the road, I'm guessing.
All right. Well, that is a fair statement. We shall see. Now, before I let you go, obviously, the main concern for New Mexicans is the spaceport itself and its future, because that's where we've invested our tax dollars into that facility. And obviously, it was built for Virgin Galactic and their model of space flight. But we've got this facility, and you can call it the sunk cost fallacy, or you can say that success at Spaceport America is just around the corner, even if it's not. But what about some of these other players like Spin Launch at Spaceport America, or Sky, SCEYE, which has blimp based internet service? Do you think uh, some of these other players will, not to use a pun, take off at Spaceport America, or are they, probably kind of just also rans, not really going to do much to make that facility viable?
Well, it's an interesting question. Spin Launch is pretty out there. Be interesting to see if they can actually make all the physics work. And
And by
as
and by out there,
Scotty's,
you mean their technology of like not launching a rocket but thrusting it into space, kind of like I don't know, a softball player spinning their arm in circles until they get enough speed on it to get it into orbit, that kind of thing. That's what we're
yeah,
talking about here.
yeah. Um, and there's some skepticism, fair amount of skepticism about whether they can make that work. But it's interesting to see if they can pull that off. That'd be a different way of getting to space. I don't know that much about the blimp company or the other ones they have out there. One thing I can say is that I live next to the Mojave Air Spaceport where Virgin Galactic still has operations, and it's a general aviation airport. It's got a industrial area. It's got rocket test centers. It's got three runways, where Spaceport America has one, and it's got a boneyard for old aircraft. Um, all that brings in revenue, but what really makes Mojave profitable is the wind industry that's right nearby. Uh, the components for these windmills, the wind turbines, are brought in by train. There's a spur off the main line here, it goes north south. They're stored at the spaceport and then trucked up to the sites. So if you're trying to, if Mojave tried to make money just on these other elements that I just mentioned, it might have a harder time doing that. So you have to be pretty diverse, I think, in making a spaceport work like that. And they built the spaceport primarily for Virgin Galactic, hoping that that would take off and, in a few years by 2010, and um, it would attract all these other aerospace companies. And it really hasn't done that for the most part. So it's not really a magnet. Um, so that's basically my theory on Spaceport America. It's just not diverse enough, and they don't have enough customers and clients and tenants. So I think it's going to be a continuing struggle, and it's not. I don't think the spaceport will draw that sort of big crowd that you get at Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg for launches. So
Well, before I let you go, just kind of big question here. We've obviously seen Boeing with their launch. Elon Musk's SpaceX has seemingly outperformed Boeing. Bezos and Blue Horizon. Uh, talk, just give us the, I don't know, 50,000 foot seems like a big deal for an airplane, but give us the kind of overall view of you know, private space at this point in time, and where you see things going. Who's leading the space race right now?
I would say it's primarily a race between SpaceX and China. If you look at the launch rates, SpaceX is trying to make a massive leap with Starship, which launched last week. And it'd be a fully reusable, extremely heavy left vehicle. China is somewhat behind, but there's a number of commercial companies that are beginning to launch more and more. They're also working on recovering the first stage the way that SpaceX does with its Falcon 9. Domestically, Blue Origin, which is Bezos's company, is going to be flying its new Glenn rocket later this year. So there'll be a competition there between two billionaires and their rocket companies. United Launch Alliance, which launched the Boeing vehicle last week, is in the mix as well. But overall, the 50,000 foot view is that space is booming right now. It's gotten easier to put satellites into orbit. There's smaller satellites that are more capable. So it's really booming across the board. And so it's a pretty exciting time to be covering this.
Deal. And again, can you give your Substack or any other ways people can find out about your work?
Yeah, it's at Douglas M. Messier, Messier at .substack.com. That's where I'm blogging these days. Um, Also, I'm on Twitter at Space Mafia. So you can follow me there, and I
Space
should be.
Mafia. That's a
Yeah,
great name.
yeah. Well, it derives from the International Space University. It's supposed to be a space mafia kind of an in joke. And, I'm a graduate of that school, so
Excellence. All right. Well, thank you very much again for your time today, Doug.
thank
And
you.
I appreciate your knowledge about space as well as Virgin Galactic and Spaceport America. So, uh, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.